So the government has scrapped Ofsted's one- and two-word judgments of schools in England. The Department for Education says the headline grades of outstanding, good, requires improvement and inadequate are no longer being used as they don't give a fair or accurate assessment of schools. Instead, parents will be shown how schools are ranked across 4 new subcategories, which will be quality of education, behaviour and attitudes, personal developments and leadership and management. And bear in mind, those are 4 headings, so the actual marking, the assessment, will be below them. The government says a new report card outlining inspectors' findings will be created for each school from September 2025. In 2023, the head teacher, Ruth Perry, took her own life after her school was rated inadequate. Her sister, Julia Waters, has campaigned to change the blanket judgments and says today's move will actually be a good thing to take the pressure off the teachers.
It's a vindication, really, of what we've been arguing for and what head teachers and teachers across the country have been telling me would be the most significant change to take the stress and anxiety of an Ofsted inspection away. My overriding feeling is one of relief.
Unions have welcomed the change. The National Education Union says 1- and 2-word judgments were ridiculous. But Shadow Education Secretary Damien Hines thinks the headline judgments were a vital indicator, and this move is not in the best interests of parents or pupils. Let us know what you think. Do email fine@bbc.co.uk with your phone number. Do text us 88291 or WhatsApp us 08000 288 291. Let's talk to Mark Lehane, Executive Head Teacher of the Wootton Academy Trust in Bedford, who's sceptical about the changes. But first, Lord Jim Knight, former Labour Schools Minister who chaired the Beyond Ofsted inquiry, which concluded last year, and that part of that was a thought that the inspection system wasn't working, Lord Knight.
That's right, Jeremy, and we strongly encouraged moves to end these single-word judgments. I think, as Bridget Phillipson, the Secretary of State, has said today, they increase the fear in the system. You know, they're rich in fear, but they're poor in information, and moving to giving parents just that little bit more information about how schools are doing across those 4 categories, which were there anyway, below that single word judgment, but it's now putting those to the fore. And I think that's better for parents and it's better for schools. And in the end, what we want is a culture that is not a culture of fear, but one of support. And so they're also announcing the establishment of regional improvement teams that will work with struggling schools to help them improve, rather than just hoping that by scaring the living daylights out of them every few years, that they might improve through fear.
Mark Lehane, why do you have qualms about that?
Well, I mean, I'm actually the executive head teacher of a school that is due an inspection literally any time now. So I've got a complete interest in what's going to happen here. And I guess that Wootton Upper School, the one I've got in mind, will be one of the first schools that has one of these new gradeless overall inspections. The reason why I'm a bit dubious is I genuinely don't think this will turn out to take the pressure off head teachers. As Jim's just said, those 4 subcategories, the judgments of those have always been there. They will continue to be there, and people will continue to see them. For me, it was never what the grades were in Ofsted that caused pressure for head teachers and teachers. It's what government would then go on to do with those grades. It's how people would interpret those grades. So inspection's really important. People know what's going on in schools is really important, because that's what makes a difference to young people's lives. So for me, let's wait and see what happens. But I don't think this is going to be the panacea that lots of people think it could be.
But isn't the problem, Mark, at the moment with the one-word thing, is that classic school is 50% great, 50% not so great, and you can't say that in one word.
No, and listen, I've always said to parents, gosh, never use an Ofsted report to inform your opinion completely on a school. Maybe it's a starting point. The best way to judge a school, let's be honest, is to get in there during the school day and go and visit it as it is for real, not just in an open evening or something like that. So they're just one part of things that families should use to try and guess how good a school is. And even now, having removed the overall grade, I'd be saying to people, don't rely on what the Ofsted report is saying, get into the school and see it for real.
Yeah, so maybe in the end, no inspection can do that, Jim Knight.
No, Mark's right. You should go and visit a school if you're thinking that your child is going there, and if you're a parent, you should be involved in your child's education because that helps your children to be engaged. And you might want to put pressure on the school if you think that they're not doing very well. But it's getting rid of the blunt instrument of that single word, and indeed a bit of complacency potentially in the system, because currently all but 15% are good or outstanding schools, according to Ofsted. That doesn't really help anyone. It doesn't really make any sense. We know that schools are good at some things and they're not so good at others. And having that bit more information helps us understand that a little bit better as parents when we're choosing where to send our school.
Are you not worried, Jim, we'll get these really, really bland reports now? It's just going to be turgid prose. There's no conclusion. It's just going to be sort of grey wash.
I don't think so. Martin Oliver, the Chief Inspector, he came from running a successful large chain of schools. He knows what school leaders need from an Ofsted inspection in order to help them improve. I think he will want to deliver that. As Mark said, those four subcategories, if you like, those four judgments that will continue were always there, and they were useful. It's moving now to more support, as I said earlier, and I think we will start to see that. And then in a year's time, we will get the report card, which will have more granular data, and where you can't hide with grey verbiage, the data will be the data.
What's going to happen then, Mark? So you said you're going to get an inspection really soon. Are you? And I know that the great suspicion is that schools basically teach to the inspection, so you work out a procedure when the inspectors arrive. Are you expecting something different from your last inspection?
I wasn't the head teacher at the school back in the day, but they haven't had a full inspection since before COVID, so it's going to be quite a big thing for lots of my colleagues because I haven't been through it. What I will say is, it's quite clear that Ofsted are not going to be launching inspections for the next few weeks. Normally, as soon as school comes back, Ofsted inspection teams are out there. But my understanding is, based on friends that are Ofsted inspectors, is they're now going to have to be put through a few weeks of training to try and figure out how they're going to do these no overall grade inspections. This is a big change for an Ofsted inspector not be able to give a school a summary grade. So I just hope that by the time inspections start again this term, when they come and visit schools like mine, all the inspectors feel confident in what they're doing, because we're asking them to do a big change in quite a short period of time.
Thank you both very much indeed. Really interesting as always. Mark Lehane, Executive Head Teacher of the Wootton Academy Trust in Bedford, and Lord Jim Knight, former Labour Schools Minister who chaired the Beyond Ofsted inquiry, talking about whether it's right to just remove these one-word descriptions of schools. Anne Milligan is in Solway, Firth, Scotland. Hi, Anne.
Hello.
What do you think? Do you think this is a good idea to move away from the one-word verdict on schools?
Oh, well, I wasn't expecting to be speaking on your programme, but I just sent a text and your editor rang. And my idea was that this sounds like creating more jobs for public sector, more jargon, need for more funding, etc., etc. And my point was, why not go the other way and have children be able to leave school at 13 or 15 and go out to work?
Wow, that's quite radical.
Not a lot of children come out of school with a healthy, happy, all-round education these days anyway, do they? And a lot of children have stress issues, which sounds like these proposals are going to cover special educational needs, etc.
Yeah.
And I think the boundary is so blurred between what is a special educational need and what is a stress mental health from eating too much sugar and being on your phone all night and looking at flashing images. I'm autistic and dyslexic, and that's a cognitive thing.
Understood.
It's just a cognitive thing.
But how did you?
Are.
Yeah, sure. But I understand.
What's going on in schools now is how all this funding goes to people who are ill because of what's going on. And teachers say they can't teach. I know lots of teachers who retired early because of stress. And instead of adding more and more to the pile-up, my idea was, why not have children able to leave at 13 or 15?
Well, let me just bring in Lisa.
Learn a trade or go and pick fruit and vegetables.
Bring in Lisa in Stansted. What do you think about Anne's point, Lisa? Do they let children leave school at 13 if they want to?
Wow. Yeah, no, like I think you said, the thing is radical. entitled to your opinion. But, I mean, one thing I do agree with her is that children learn differently, and we do have a bit of a one-size-fits-all education system, sadly, which I am part of. I am a university lecturer, and I've worked in education for over 20 years,
Right.
and being an Ofsted inspector is obviously the reason why I made a comment on your show today. But, I mean, children do learn differently. I mean, leaving school at 13, I'm not sure I would be advocating that, to be honest, Jeremy.
So what about the one-word judgments?
Well, I think it's just, I don't think that, as I said to your researcher, I don't think the one-word judgment was a problem.
Oh, we've not got a good line there, but thank you. Gareth in Shrewsbury, hi.
Hi, Jeremy.
What do you think?
Well, I said I sent a text in just comparing, in a sense, with Britain in Bloom judging, with which I'm a Britain in Bloom judge, and where we give not a one-word thing. We give sort of gold, silver, bronze sort of categories to the entrance.
Yeah.
But we have to back up our assessment. Full page we can write. If we give a bad mark, we have to explain why that mark is bad and where they went wrong and how they can do better in the following assessment. So I don't quite understand with school assessments where they went wrong with that. They have to give some sort of, it's on the onus for the judge in my case or the assessor with the schools to give an assessment, but back up with decent information as to why it went wrong and why the assessment was given as such.
I understand. I mean, I think the comparison, the difficulty is we had that terrible story of the suicide of the head teacher, Ruth Perry, and she had this word inadequate buzzing around in her head, and people said she just couldn't stop saying it and writing it down, and she became absolutely fixated on the poor verdict her school had got. Now, when you compare it to Britain in Bloom, at least somebody's livelihood isn't riding on it if they get a bad score.
Well, I'm conscious that there's obviously it's a much more serious thing with school assessments, but it was more you can give a one word, or in our case a one award sort of judgment, but you need to explain why it was given.
Understood. Helen in West Cornwall, hello.
Hello.
You've been teaching in a small school there for a long time.
I have. I've just finished my 23rd year at the same school.
Oh, well done. Now, where? But do you want to tell us where or not?
Not really.
Okay, no, don't then.
Just West Cornwall. Yeah.
West Cornwall. Fine, beautiful part of the world. So you got the kind of inspection that Ruth Perry got, I gather.
Yeah, we did. We hadn't been inspected for a number of years, just the way it had fallen. We were part of a huge multi-academy trust. Our inspection came. At the time, we had an executive head teacher, which is common in a small school. And we got an inadequate grading from our inspection, which was destroying. We've been a school of choice for a long time. People choose us. Generations of the same family come to our school. And it was heartbreaking. Our head teacher left the profession, and 3 other very experienced members of staff left as well because they just couldn't believe the outcome that we had got.
And when you look back, can you work out what the inspectors were doing, or did they just have a migraine, or what?
I can see now, looking back on it, there were some changes that needed to be made. But I don't know. People since then have said that they had their mind made up the minute they walked through the door. It was just, like I said, it was just destroying. For me, personally, it was probably the blackest time of my teaching career. I felt a bit like a fraud, like I was no good at the job I did.
And I gather that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was going to say that I know teachers get very upset because some of the Ofsted inspectors have never been teachers themselves.
Yeah, the inspector that we had, one of the inspectors we had, was hadn't actually taught for very long. And it just felt, all of our years' worth of experience was just meant nothing to anybody. We none of us go to school thinking we're going to do a bad job. We're there for the best for the children. That's why we're educators. That's the most important thing for us. Our saving grace was our parents. They were full of support. When we had the meeting with our trustees and our CEO, our parents were all rallying for us and what support could be given to us as teachers because they didn't want to lose us.
So the lesson was what then at the end of it? Did you get things back together?
Yeah, we were taken on by a new trust, which was brilliant. They've been really supportive. We were given a new full-time head teacher, which was fantastic. And we've had school improvement partners in for the last 2 years. And, you know, we are getting consistently good gradings from that person who has been the most fantastic support. On his very first visit into our school, he fed back to us that, you know, he always looks at a school and thinks, would I send my children there? And he said, without a doubt, would I send my children to this school? It's a good school.
Right,
so,
right.
you know, we've been through the mill and we've lost some brilliant people, 3 of whom have left the profession completely. But we're on the other side. But it's heartbreaking for anybody like me who's been teaching for a long time.
I understand. Thank you, Helen. You're clearly brilliant. Thank you so much. Chris in Bristol, hi.
Hi, are you all right?
No, yes, thank you. Your wife is a teacher, and you think these one-word grades are bad.
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago they got Ofsted, and I'll tell you the story. They had a new head teacher start, and then they were unfortunately off long-term sick. So it's a small school, so all the teachers were kind of chipping in, taking on, covering their duties. And then they had Ofsted come in. The Ofsted knew this, so they went ahead with the inspection, and they ended up a requires improvement grade based around the paperwork side of things, which isn't fair at all. If you read it requires improvement, you think, I don't want to go to that school, but that would actually mean the definition of satisfactory. They were meeting the children's needs, but there could be things that they could have been doing better. Like I said, that was mostly around the admin side of stuff, so I don't think they're particularly fair. So I welcome them going, essentially.
Well, you know, it's funny. The school that started all this, the Ruth Perry School, was apparently admin as well. And it maybe admin is the easiest thing for inspectors to catch you out on because in the end it's black and white. But it may be the least important thing because you know whether the teachers are any good is nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I think this school, you know, obviously I'm a little biased because my wife teaches there. It's a great school. They really know the children. They really support all their needs. But they find themselves doing tick box exercises now to kind of make sure the paperwork's there, that takes time away from looking after the children and supporting them.
And I guess you regret that, do you?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing for them to do, but they need to do it because Ofsted are, you know, obviously breathing down their necks and want to see these improvements.
Thank you, Chris. Alan Texas says our local high school recently got a good verdict after 2 visits from Ofsted. There were fights during one of the visits, and nearly 40% of the parents surveyed said they would not recommend the school. I know of no parent who's happy with the education there. Ofsted gave it good. There's another side when you've got a school that is no good and you're told it is good. Keith Wadsworth is in Letchworth and says the proposal will simply allow for all the same detail but avoid condensing a plethora of observations into one damning word. If lead inspectors can't come up with a single sentence capturing that, then they shouldn't be lead inspectors. I was a head teacher before I retired in 2010. One more for you. Alice emails and says no school leader ever complained about being judged in one word when the word was outstanding. So what is the issue with these one-word judgments? Adam says teachers are always whinging about stress and pressure. Like many public sector workers, they should try working in a commercial business and have their income related to their productivity. Then they'd know about stress.